Hello, this is the El Paso Liberty Group. My name is James Peinado. I've requested all the candidates running in the 2013 election for mayor of El Paso if they would be interested in doing an interview with us. Several of them have responded. The first one to respond was Jaime Perez of the East Side, who is running for mayor. And so I have a list of questions for him. We're going to try to, I guess, maybe ask some things that haven't been asked before. But how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Well, glad to have you here. We're honored to have you. I guess let's just start with something very fundamental. What would you say are the core functions of local government? What should we look to our local government to do?
I think the core function of local government is to take care of basic infrastructure, lights, streets, sidewalks, alleys, just to provide the context in which businesses can do business and people can go about their business in terms of their homes and how they want to live.
Okay. And then I understand that I guess it depends on the charter that our city has, but what should we be looking for in a mayor? What is the primary purpose of having a mayor?
The way I see it, a mayor is someone who understands the community, who is part of that community, who has his finger on the pulse, if you will, of the community in terms of its fundamental needs and also aspirations. And then, of course, the office of the mayor is the bully pulpit where that person can then advocate for or proselytize around those kind of values that motivate the lifeblood of people's thinking and emotions.
Okay. Well, as you know, and you all have talked at length with the public and their trust in city government. Some will say that the trust has been hurt because of decisions made. Others say that there's been a lot of progress made, and we should be happy with the current administration. But with those who are concerned or they no longer have a lot of faith in government because of whether it be disfranchising of the people's votes or suspicion of deals made behind closed doors, how would you work to regain the public's trust in our city government?
I really wouldn't even worry about it. I mean, it's not about, you can't work on someone trusting you. You just act and behave, and they will observe how you act and behave, and that will either engender trust or it won't. I'm fairly straightforward when I speak to people, and they either sense that I'm sincere or not. And so, but I'm not going to worry about, did I convince him or her? I'm just going to worry about doing the right thing for the city and doing the right thing according to my own set of values, and then people can either trust that or not. Okay.
One concern is I think I heard you this morning talking about a trustee type of politician versus a delegate type of politician who whether they're elected to represent what their constituents want or whether we elect somebody because we believe they'll make the right decision. Is there one side that you prefer, like a politician you prefer to be, or do you balance it out? Or
I think there has to be a balance. I mean, certainly there are times in which there may be a difficult decision to make or one that may have long-term consequences where maybe there's not enough information and you're just going to have to go with your gut feeling and your sense of what's best. And that's when you take on that trustee persona. But for the most part, those decisions are very few and far between, and I think most of the time you should be about understanding what most people want and be able to articulate that preference. And so I would say that if you look at how I act and behave and believe, I would say I'm probably a 80-20, 80% representative delegate type of politician with a 20% trustee, because sometimes you will be faced with some decisions that will require you to act in good faith and not necessarily wait for public opinion to catch up with you.
I see. A lot of criticism, a lot of conflict was risen by that Tom Brown resolution from a couple years ago, 2009, I think. And they say that if you listen to what I was saying, I guess with the resolution that Tom Brown wrote, a lot of people criticized the administration for a lack of leadership. After asking a few members of the administration, Susie Byrd, Beto O'Rourke, and Steve Ortega, the response has been, well, the city can't get too far into rewriting the resolution that the citizens write. And Steve Ortega talks to the legality that he has with the Attorney General. And so, I mean, did they make a trustee decision to override the person's resolution, or were they just doing everything they could because their hands were tied with legal bindings with the Texas Attorney General?
Oh, there were no legal bindings whatsoever. This was just a trustee decision. In other words, they know better than everybody else. Mm-hmm. They were opposed to the overturning. They put it on the ballot. They lost, and so then they moved forward anyway. I mean, they just totally disrespected the voters, and this had to do with their hubris, their arrogance of being knowing better than other people instead of respecting what people were telling them. And it would have been easily solved had the real issues been talked about, which is that if an employee has a benefit and they went to extend it to another adult in the household, they should be allowed to do that because every person is equal. So the equality of equal standing before the law is a much better principle under which to base a decision rather than trying to engineer a social arrangement, a domestic partnership that was an afterthought, because initially it was only for gays, and then it was expanded to domestic in order to cover that decision. So all along it was deception and complete disrespect for what I considered was the will of the people, that they did not want them to get involved in religious or private matters.
Very good. And with all these petitions and whatnot, the backlash from 2009, we've seen a lot of petitions. Several of them were, I guess, filed correctly, apparently, but sometimes it seems like they're not. I think there was a recall petition for the mayor, John Cook. His rationale for not conducting a recall was that it would cost the city too much money. If you were elected mayor, or just whoever is elected mayor, how can we keep politicians accountable once they get elected into the office? Because it just seems so difficult to act.
Well, it isn't really difficult to act. The problem is they don't respect it. Mm-hmm. I think it's no secret that if we can say 10 petitions have been filed over the last 10 years, I've helped in 8 of them. I mean, I've been the man behind the scenes on a lot of them in terms of how to do it. Mm-hmm. So it's not that the petition process is cumbersome, or it isn't that people are irresponsible in the petition process. It's simply that this city council, hasn't respected the process. Now, is it pleasant to go through a recall? If I'm mayor and someone has a recall petition, it's going to be unpleasant. But if that's what they want, that's what they want, and you respect it. You've got you got your general election date in May, and you got your general election date in November. So, I mean, how hard is it to just put it on the ballot on either one? It's 6 months apart. It's not difficult. And so it might cost another $20,000 to add an item to the ballot. How much is Cook facing right now in terms of legal fees? $500,000? I mean, so if you look at the cost benefit, just let people do what they want to do. And if the people agree with you, they'll keep you in office. And if they don't, you're going to be recalled. And that's the right thing, because if that's what they want, that's what they want.
Fair enough. Another concern, a concern that a lot of people in the El Paso Liberty Group have, they notice that more and more state, federal governments are trying to have unrestricted access, regardless of warrants and inalienable rights, to be able to go into a person's emails, Facebooks, bank accounts, medical records, if they ever have any suspicion. But it seems like there's less and less restrictions the government has to invade the people's privacy. And yet at the same time, I noticed that there was a lot of Freedom of Information Act controversy in El Paso, and it's been brought to the attention, and Susie Byrd and several other people have been fighting it. What do you make out of all this? And is there anything as mayor that would you be able to say, I'm as transparent as can be, or how would you go about that relationship?
They're lying, because Susie Byrd and Steve Ortega are saying that the request included private emails. That's simply not true. The request was for any emails relative to business, city business.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the request. They could have easily produced those emails and redacted them. I mean, they could have taken out anything that they, having to do with private matters, if they were in the same email, and then we would have end of controversy. But they didn't want to do that because I suspect that they're trying to hide the fact that there were a whole lot more discussions going on relative to some of the bond programs and specifically the ballpark that they don't want us to know about. That's what I suspect is going on. Okay, that said, at the local level, on the federal level, I'm real concerned about that because the latest standard, as I understand it, is that they can go into your emails older than 6 months because they're considered at that point to have been, quote, abandoned, unquote. And that really concerns me because what that allows the government to do is to go on fishing expeditions. They can say that, some guy who says, Jaime is a libertarian, so I think he smokes marijuana daily. And so on that basis, the FBI can then go into my Yahoo email 6 months hence and start fishing to see if there's anything there about me, about anything, any crime, because once they start reviewing my emails, they might say, well, he talked to this guy and this guy was involved with that, or what I'm saying, it's just a slippery slope. And I think the law needs to change because what's happening is technology is greatly outpacing our legal structure, our legal framework. And I think it's something that I think all liberty-minded people need to pay attention to, because if anything that you've written 6 months hence is now subject to review, essentially, I look at it as a search without a warrant. Is basically what a warrantless search is what's really happening.
Okay, well, bringing it back to the local level, that's kind of like the government have a suspicion and they go to emails 6 months prior, abandoned emails, and they have suspicion. They don't need a warrant. But with politicians at the local level, like let's say we have suspicion that our administration had emails that they had not released to the public, and they should have because they had,
business, public business, right?
Yeah, like if I have suspicion that any of my representatives hadn't turned anything in, should the people be able to look at all their private emails? Do you think
their private emails having to do with business? Absolutely. Okay. In other words, I could send an email to somebody and be joking about something. I tease a lot, and everybody knows that I joke a lot on Facebook and so on and so forth. And I make stuff up. I love to tell tall tales, like when it's led a debate, and I said, I just took my blood pressure meds. I don't have high blood pressure, and I don't take meds. But it's a rhetorical device, right?
Gotcha.
So let's say that I'm joking about something and making fun of some situation. And then right in the middle of it, I say, and by the way, if you kick in $1 million, I'll vote to expand the swimming pool at Armijo. Well, if there's a request of any business transacted relative to a bond dollar spent on the swimming pool in Armijo, I can redact all my jokes and humor about everything and just leave that little line that says, I'll kick in $1 million, whatever. That is legitimate. It's a legitimate request, and why would I hold that back? Because unless it's criminal, why would I hold it back? But you have no right to know who I'm teasing about, short skirts or tight pants or whatever else I might be putting in the email, because everybody knows I'm always doing that kind of stuff, making jokes and so on and so forth. My Facebook, for example, I post a lot of stuff on Facebook. Sometimes I use rhetorical devices, sometimes I tease, sometimes I make jokes, whatever. And somebody says, on your Facebook you put X, Y, and Z. Well, that's fine, but I know that when I post on Facebook, it's public. By definition. I mean, there's nothing I can say, well, I didn't mean it, because usually, I know exactly what I'm saying on my Facebook page. But on my Yahoo account, I expect there's a privacy. And so I may say something about somebody or whatever that I would not ordinarily share in the public, and you have no right to that. That's my private information. However, as I said, if right in the middle of it, I start talking about business, city business, then you do have a right to say, hey, if you have an email that has city business in it, I want to see what you said. You have a right to that information. And if I comply, then we can avoid more, you pressuring me and say, well, I want to see it all now because, you didn't want to let me know. You didn't want to let me see that one line, and therefore I want to see the rest of it. And then I'm in a pickle because of my resistance to your legitimate request. Now I'm in the situation that I have to show you all of the email because you don't trust me anymore. And that's what's happened at the local level. For example, they asked Eddie Holguin about a personal email that had to do with city business. So he submitted an email in which he had some private stuff and some public stuff. So he redacted the private stuff and then submitted that to the attorney, the city attorney. And then you know what the city attorney says? Oh, well, we don't really need it because we're fighting it. We want to make a broader definition so they can't get any of your emails. Well, that's not the answer. I mean, he was acting in good faith and said, hey, yeah, I did talk about some public business. Here it is. And, the city attorney has no business telling him, oh, no, well, we're trying to not do that. What do you mean you're trying to not do that? You should be trying to do that. You should be trying to get that information out.
There you go. Going to another topic that affects the liberty of people in El Paso. A lot of people were watching, captive to the TV, the radio, and the internet, watching Boston. And not so much the event itself, but the aftershock, how they caught the suspects, and the way that the suspects were treated, the way that the citizens of Boston were treated. I'm not going to point anything out, but it seems like a lot of what was once considered precious, inalienable rights, especially by the city of Boston, it just seems like that city has changed so much, and so now they're willing to give up inalienable rights for the pursuit of suspects. And then there's even questioning of whether those suspects, once caught or killed, was all that handled correctly? As mayor, what do you have? Any comments on that? If something were to happen in El Paso where we're looking for two people in their 20s and teenagers that are alleged to do something, how would you go about it?
It's a really difficult matter. It's not an easy answer.
Okay.
Because just reality check. As mayor, I would have no say. The Homeland Security would just take over.
Okay.
At that point, the jurisdiction becomes federal. So, I mean, I can give an opinion, but no one's going to listen to me because Homeland Security will just take over the city like they did in Boston. They just kind of have the mayor running around as a prop, but the mayor had nothing to say about anything. So,
isn't it the sheriff's job, though? I mean, you work with the sheriff. I've heard that the sheriff is supposed to...
Technically.
Okay.
But, like I said, they're props. Homeland Security... The jurisdiction becomes federal. Whenever there's that kind of a crime or terrorist act, whatever, it automatically engages the feds. And the feds will then essentially... They'll bring the sheriff together and the chief of police and any other security agencies in the area, but the head at the table is Homeland Security. So, I mean, that's just the way it is. So I'm not going to have much to say about it. That said, one of the things that I would encourage the police department, which is the mayor's jurisdiction, but I also have a good relationship with the sheriff, Wiles and so on, is that I think they should focus in on real dangers, not speculate about what may happen, but about what has happened and how much merit there is for a particular policy, because we cannot knee-jerk that like, for example, when it happened, there was a lag time. We didn't know if it was international terrorism or local terrorism, whatever. And you may have noticed that in one of my Facebook posts, I said, look, when things like this happen, take it slow, take a deep breath, wait before you overreact. Because the danger is, if I have a different mindset and a terrorist says, hey, I can bring a city to a standstill with a little, pipe bomb or whatever at an event, and I can actually shut a city down for 24 hours or more, then you're giving me a tremendous leverage, because I can do 4 or 5 of these around the country and basically shut the place down. So one of the first things I posted was, let's not overreact, take a breather. What happened? How did it happen? And then move from there. Unfortunately, you've got a national press that loves controversy, and so they blow it up even more than it is. So, it's a difficult thing. But short of that, in El Paso, I've said publicly to the police and to the sheriffs that, they need to get off the backs of regular people and really just focus on serious crime against persons, rapes, beating people up, stealing from people's homes, breaking in, all those sorts of... Focus on real crime to protect citizenry and get off of this law enforcement. In other words, to switch the focus from law enforcement to security. And if there was some cartoon or something, or some image where a policeman says to parents, "Don't scare your children by saying, if you don't behave, I'll call the cops, because we want them in a moment of need to come to us." Well, James, in a moment of need, I would never go to the cops, because their job is law enforcement. So while I'm complaining to them that somebody broke into my house, they're looking to see if I have weed in my house, or if I have drugs in my house, or if I've got stolen goods in my house, or they're going to be looking for something to get me on, because that's their job. Their job is not to keep me safe. Their job is to find crime. So I would want to change that focus as mayor.
You bring that up on your website about the police officers, and that you'd like them to kind of focus more on protect and serve, and that I guess, as you said, just answered, it's more on law enforcement than protecting and serving.
Well, there is no protect and serve. Protect and serve is a nice little slogan
on the car.
But that's not their function. Their function is law enforcement. And I've seen that the 2 or 3 times that I've had actual need to call the police, their response was always, "What have you done wrong?" I said, "I didn't call you to find out what I've done wrong. I called you that I have a problem here that I need you to take care of." So I would rather they put law enforcement on the car and their function be security, because that's what we need. We need to feel safe. When that happens, then for everything I'm going to call the cops, because then I'm going to feel, hey, they're here to take care of me, not they're here to find some way to screw me.
There you go. And law enforcement, I mean, we all want our law enforcement to be that organization that we go to in times of help. But it seems like, just watching Boston and other, I guess, isolated examples, it seems like law enforcement is used to abuse the rights of citizens. And as mayor, you might be used as a prop, but I mean, like, is there anything you can do to say, like, well, these are citizens in my city, and I want to make sure that their rights are...
Oh, absolutely, no question about it. And in fact, when I was chief of staff, I actually sat on the security board here locally at the 911, and it included Homeland Security, the sheriffs, police, everybody, the constables, all the law enforcement officials, and my job in representing the county was to make sure that we were telling people the truth about what was going on, that we were addressing some of the problems that were arising at that time. That was when the heaviest of the killings were going on in Juarez. What we needed to do, and so on. So absolutely, yes. I mean, I intend to be a very strong voice with respect to protecting people's civil liberties. But that said, in those kinds of situations, Homeland Security basically overrides everything. And sometimes they listen and sometimes they don't.
A quick answer, perhaps. But Second Amendment rights and restrictions, whether they pass or fail, in higher levels of government, like the state or the federal. What's your take on Second Amendment rights and the people's right to bear arms?
I absolutely think that people should have a right to bear arms. I definitely am against any kind of national registry. I think people should be able to access weapons and keep them in their house for safety and so on. I don't think that, with all due respect to people who are concerned that by not doing so we're promoting mass killings, they're just simply wrong. There's no evidence to suggest that if we were to make any kinds of weapons illegal, that these things wouldn't happen, because this is a function of people that are basically insane or psychopathic, and they go and kill a bunch of people, and whether it's with knives or whether it's with automatic weaponry, those things are going to continue to happen. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the society that we live in today. I don't like... I know that some are saying, well, we only want to ban, the large magazines and so on, but what worries me about that is the slippery slope. Because once you ban the one with, for sake of discussion, 36 bullets, and the next one is going to be 15 bullets, and then soon you're out of bullets. You're out of bullets. So I definitely support Second Amendment.
Are there any, we already do have a lot of restrictions as it is because we have to get licensed to CHL. We can't have fully automatic unless we pay a huge price tag. But are there any policies that you would be in favor of for controlling guns?
Not at the local level, no.
Okay.
I wouldn't even go there. I would just say that that's not where we need to be.
Fair enough. Next thing, there exists a lot of criticisms and a lot from yourself as well about perhaps an oligarchy that exists in El Paso and this region. What advice do you have to citizens who want this stuff to become more mainstream? And what advice do you have for citizens who are concerned about this to get these ideas out into the minds of the people to affect public policy?
You mean in terms of awareness of that oligarchy?
Yeah, how do we promote awareness?
No, I think on the website. I think any communications that where... See, the oligarchy here is really good at strong-arming people. They're really good at intimidating people. And, they'll call you up and hang up, and they'll get you followed and so on and so forth. This is just kind of like second nature to them because they know they can get away with it. So so for example, if that starts happening, well, I'm going to immediately make it public, and say this is what's going on, and so people can know and be aware. When Bob Moore put words in my mouth that I was saying people were unintelligent, and I told them straight up right there in the meeting. I said, "Don't put words in my mouth," and I said that on KLAQ, and so now I'm sure that the next time I meet with Bob Moore, he's going to refrain from putting words in my mouth because he knows that I'm going to go to the public and say, hey, this is what this guy told me. Now you can see what he's doing and how he works. And that's the best defense, is just to expose it, to make it public.
You do speak at length about criticisms that you have with the editor of the El Paso Times and other publications. Is there any sources of news, like El Paso local sources of news, that you trust or that you do advocate?
Well, I don't advocate for any. They're really, the blogs have been destroyed. There used to be a few blogs. There aren't any longer. Maybe there's a handful. Maybe your group can be, can become, as we look ahead, maybe somebody can start blogging from that point of view. But really, there are no real credible blogs that I can go to and say, you know what, I'm going to get the real dope on something. No, I don't think there any exists right now in El Paso. Occasionally you'll have elpasonews.org will come up with something good. Sometimes a tidbit will come out of a couple of other Deep Inside El Paso blog. And then I blog sometimes, but I get so busy that I really don't update regularly. That I will address local issues, but no, that there's definitely a gap. There's a niche there for somebody to emerge, or a group of people to emerge to fill that need. But we need those kinds of blogs that expose what's going on.
Okay. Economics, a lot of stuff going on with downtown. Government making decisions and the private citizens reacting to that to try to gain from what the public does, the government does. But what should be the role in promoting prosperity? What's your philosophy on a city government promoting prosperity in a city?
The role of government in promoting prosperity is to just do the basic infrastructure. Going back to Uncle Charlie. If Uncle Charlie can keep the roof from leaking and the walls from cracking and the sewer working and the water flowing and the electricity good and have the light bulbs in place and so on, and you got a sound home, that's the role of government. Taking them to the zoo and amenities, keeping the kids entertained, all of that, that's Auntie Lulu, and that's not government. Unfortunately, the government we have right now, they're, Auntie Lulu types because
Auntie Lulu?
Yeah, Auntie Lulu versus Uncle Charlie.
Oh, okay.
And Auntie Lulu, it's all about fun for the kids and keeping them entertained. That's not the role of government. And so I see a very pragmatic government taking care of pragmatic things that are needed. And then all the good stuff, private sector. Let the private sector do what it does best. And if the mega millionaires and billionaires of this town want to have nice little projects, let them pay for it and let them risk the market.
Yeah, I noticed that, like the city government thinks that one route to prosperity is to promote entertainment and that we have fun things to do in El Paso. Another person will say that we need to go to where the companies are, tell them to come to El Paso and roll out the red carpet and take them to the zoo.
Right.
Right. There's all these different strategies and whatnot.
And that's not going to happen because the pragmatic approach, which is my approach, is I want to go to a company and tell them, come to El Paso, you're going to find the best workers. Mm-hmm. You're going to get the best human resources and the most educated assets. That's what companies want to hear. That's what they want. Well, they could care less about our museum because our museum will never be the Guggenheim. Uh-huh. And our zoo is never going to compete with San Antonio. And our Western Playland is never going to be SeaWorld. I mean, it's just the way it is. So it's ridiculous to be taking money from taxpayers to try to create a facade of what other cities has, like Dallas, San Antonio, Austin. We're not that. We're, the Chamber of Commerce going to Seattle to get ideas of what we could do in El Paso. Give me a break. We have nothing in common with Seattle. Seattle has an extremely highly educated population. They're next to the ocean. It's beautiful. It's green. It's full of water. I mean, come on. Mm-hmm. And what do we have in common with Seattle? Nothing. And culturally, linguistically, ethnically, nothing. We have nothing in common with Seattle. So to try to create a facade of nice-looking things because somehow we're going to attract the company to come to El Paso instead of Seattle, I mean, if a COO comes to me and I'm a head of a major corporation and says, we really need to go to El Paso because it's prettier than Seattle, I'm going to say, you're fired. Let me get somebody better. Get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of here. You're done. Yeah. So, no, that's not it. But if a COO comes to me and says, you know what, the UTEP Community College, the medical school have got this training program. We can get good workers, trained workers for our technology research center. I'm going to go, let's do it. Let's go to El Paso. And I could care less the size of the zoo. Mm-hmm. I'm going to want to know that I'm going to be able to have a good return on my investment.
Yeah. The resources, the educated people are there. So that's a good place.
And that's my focus. And of course, as mayor, my education budget is zero. So basically, I'm saying bully pulpit. Use the office of mayor as a way to advocate for those things.
Yeah, and I see a lot of policies have been made to kind of make things easier to promote growth in the medical, Mexican-American trade, and military sectors. Right. And those are the economic drivers.
Right.
But, I mean, should the city be making policies easier, subsidies or tax incentives,
no,
to pick and choose these things?
Absolutely not, no. Because, in fact, I've had this conversation with a number of people. Including people that are heads of corporations, and I've asked them. I said, what do you look for, and so on. They've responded. And I remember one conversation in particular where he was telling me, frankly, all the cities give us all sorts of incentives. I mean, we just expect that, But what we look for is that we're going to make a good return on our investment, and what we look for is a workforce that's going to do the job for us. What we look for is being in a location where we can reach our markets. So we fit that bill, except for the education part. When a third of our people don't even have high school diplomas, and I mean, come on, we are way behind the curve as far as education is concerned. So I think if the mayor can use the office as a bully pulpit to promote that and work with the schools, and I think we'd be well served.
Okay. I think that covers a lot of it. I do notice a lot of things on your website about a lot of things talking about audits. Is the mayor able to just, does he need a vote, or can he just demand that there be an audit on city investment policy, police and fire pension fund?
When I wrote that initially, when I first started in the campaign, I said audit because a lot of people were saying, we first need to go in there and know what's going on. So we need to find out first what's going on. I don't necessarily mean to bring in an auditing firm and pay them thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars to do an audit. What I mean by that, unless, of course, it's necessary, like in the pension fund, that may be necessary to bring a formal accounting firm.
For the fire and police pension.
Yeah, to take a look at that formally. But the other, as far as departments, I just want to know what's going on. So I want to audit them, and what I mean by that is I want all the department chairs to tell me, okay, what were you doing? Why were you doing it? Why is that the best policy? And so on. And so I'm thinking fact-finding, researching, looking at graphs about what did you do over the last 10 years and why did you do it and how did it turn out and what's our return and so on and so forth. So that's what I mean by this kind of general audit strategy is I want to know what's going on and I'm going to make it public. Like, for example, the feasibility study that they keep telling us that they undertook and that justified the implosion of City Hall. I want to see it. Okay. Because they have not released it.
And it's not on the city website? It is
not released. There is no feasibility study. So what that tells me is that they lied. Now, if you have a city administrator going to the public and saying, we did a feasibility study and we're ready to go, and then create a context for the city to decide to implode a building, and there was never a feasibility study, or it was kind of like some report that one of her underlings put together for her, that's cause to fire her. Because she has put us in a $100 million pickle on the basis of a 3-page report by an underling who reports to her, knowing that that's what you wanted to do. And that's going to be a major scandal. If Steve Ortega does not win and any one of us candidates wins, that's going to be a major scandal. And that may also result in the ballpark not getting built. Because if the numbers are not there, if the underlying economics are not there, that means that the bonds are fraudulent. Because you cannot sell bonds based on a valuation of a project that's not bona fide. In fact, Victoria, California, just got cited by the government, by the federal government, because they overvalued a project and then sold bonds on that overvaluation. Wow. So here they're saying, this is going to cost X number of, and this is the value of the underlying land, this is the underlying assets. If they don't have those values, and they've already put a price on the bonds, and they're going to market with those bonds as we speak, then you're in trouble. Because not only can you be sued by the people that are buying the bonds, you can be investigated by the federal people in terms of just having to justify the valuation of those bonds. So it could turn into a major scandal.
And only time will tell, depending on who gets elected.
Right.
Okay. Well, Jaime, you've been very gracious with your time.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You take care.